Hello there, friends. Adam Cleary from FourFourTwo here, and this does feel a bit weird to say, right? But Big Mick Arteta, you rock my world. Now I know, yes, it was only a draw, and they've still got a huge challenge ahead of them to get through to the semi-final. But just in this match, this 90 minutes here, we saw some frankly genius changes from Arteta. Some were big, some were small, but I think they do sort of prove now that he's one of the best in-game managers in European football. Anyway, not to mix my educational metaphors up too much, but what happened in this game was that Bayern taught Arsenal a bit of a lesson, and yet Arsenal still found a way to pass the test. That kind of works. Alright then, my pedigree chums, this was how Arsenal lined up against Bayern Munich. No real surprises here. It's that 4-3-3 we've seen all season, except no, of course it's not actually a 4-3-3. Arsenal adapt this based on the team they're playing. And their main adaptive strategy was that Declan Rice actually sat in a double pivot with Jorginho, with Ødegaard sort of instructed to be a little bit further forward. The plan here was then they had 4 players nice and deep. They could bait Bayern's press and then go through it. Except straight away, this clearly wasn't going to work, because Bayern might be down bad in Germany. They might be down so bad, but they're still Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of a Champions League. They pressed Arsenal in an incredibly disciplined 4-4-2 and basically used these 4 players to cut off these 6 players from Arsenal. The wide players would stop the balls going out to the fullbacks, and Kane and Musiala would just not press the 2 centre-backs. They were allowed to have the ball here, and they would use instead their shadow cover, which is something we've talked about on the channel before. It's where you basically mark, not by marking, but mark by process of blocking off the pass. Look, this nicely illustrates it, to stop the ball going to Rice and Jorginho. But this is Arsenal. Loads of teams try and do this to them. They've got a very clear plan for how to deal with that, and instead what happens is it's not a double pivot. Martin Ødegaard then feels free to drop as deep as he likes to get on the ball. Then all of a sudden, you've got 2 players trying to mark 3. The angles don't work anymore, and that's how they play through you. But again, this is Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of a Champions League, and they knew Arsenal were going to do this, and they had a solution for it. And that solution was, so you know Kiwior here, yeah? The solution was to just him off. Whenever Arsenal gave this a go, Leroy Sané would just leave him, and then they would all shuffle over one, and then now again you can't play through the middle. Now of course you can see the problem with this. You've now left a man completely free. Arsenal could get the ball to Kiwior anytime they want when they're building out, but Bayern had calculated this risk and they did not fear him. They were like, look, you've got Jorginho and Rice and Ødegaard and Ben White and Saliba and Gabriel. If you want to give it to Kiwior out of all those players, crack on, lads. So, genius move number 1 by Arteta was to find a way to get Ødegaard and Rice on the ball even through all of this pressing and marking. And he did that by allowing both the fullbacks to move all the way up. The wide players went slightly narrower. And then having Martin Ødegaard and Declan Rice basically pull out into the fullback positions. I genuinely had to do one of those cartoon rubbing my eyes bits when I saw this early on in the game. That is a back 4 with Ødegaard at right back and Rice at left back. And as changes go, it's really good, this one, because both the Bayern's wide players are supposed to be watching the fullback, so you've effectively pushed them really far back, allowing your best progressive passer of the ball and your best progressive carrier of the ball to now get on it in space. Now obviously Sané is a very wily player and didn't really get baited into this. He was still quite happy to leave Kiwior and just move on to Rice here instead, as he was supposed to do. But Serge Gnabry, he can't leave Ben White, so that forced him all the way back down that side and let Ødegaard just have so much control of the play from this deep position. Like, the guy's heat map in this match is insane. Like, given the territorial dominance Arsenal had in this match, how far back they were pushing Bayern, the amount of times Ødegaard is receiving it wide and in his own half is absolutely nuts. Even his pass map in this game is quite bizarre. Like, if we overlay that as well, you can see all the successful passes he made. It's like this little sort of cone, or I can't remember what shapes are called, like curve from wide right to the outside of his box. You can see him sort of like floating away from Bayern's defensive structure to get on the ball where the space was. Now, yes, obviously, in an ideal world, you do want Martin Ødegaard to be getting on the ball in this part of the pitch, but if you can't do that, the next best thing is to just get him on the ball full stop. And that's how Arsenal scored. This is the build-up to Arsenal's first goal. You can see Ben Whitey's pushed all the way up, forcing Gnabry back. Saka's there as well, so Bayern are pinned in down that side. And then right back Martin Ødegaard gets the kind of time and space here that he's never ever going to get here. Something just quintessentially Arsenal about what happens next, because they need a centre-forward, right? A proper goal scorer who stays between the width of the post. They're never going to win anything without one of those, right? Well, the only reason they score this goal is because when it's turned over, they've got a 3v2 advantage here because Kai Havertz is free to roam wherever he wants and comes across because he thinks he can be helpful there. If he was just loitering around the penalty spot, this goal does not happen. But this is the best thing about football, right? Because Arsenal have made these changes which have completely undone Bayern's plan for stopping them. They're now playing through, they're dominating the game. They have their foot on Bayern's neck, and perversely, this was the worst thing that could happen. And that's because one of Bayern's major problems this season is that they've struggled to dominate games the way you would expect Bayern to dominate games. If they're going to have most of the ball, they can sometimes struggle to break teams down. If they've got to go toe-for-toe in possession with their opponents, they can struggle to assert their dominance. But they have still got a number of players who are brilliant at being really fast and really direct and doing counter-attacking football. It's just that when you are the biggest team in your country, you almost never get dominated enough that actually happens. But Arsenal, of course, they did manage to dominate them and press right the way up. And weirdly, that made Bayern incredibly dangerous in the space behind. Like, I've seen a lot of discourse about whether it was Gabriel's fault or Raya's fault for that first goal. Should he have left it? Should he have come that far? But if you look at where Arsenal are when Bayern clear that ball, it's not even just that they're on the halfway line, they're practically camped in the final third. David Raya won't just be on alert for this, he'll be on, like, 5-alarm chili and 6 espressos, making sure he closes that gap if the ball goes into it. So I don't think actually either of them were at fault. This is just a very precarious situation, and Gabriel is unlucky that the pass misses a teammate, but also unlucky that it lands at Bayern when they are dreaming about getting into this kind of situation. Now, I will say the second goal is one of the most un-Arsenal goals to concede that they've had all season. Like, they lose an individual one-on-one battle. Kiwior, this side, just gets turned and run away from. And then they're a bit indecisive in the challenge. Everybody sort of jumps in, but nobody does it particularly dedicatedly, committedly. You know the kind of word I mean. And then they end up fouling him. But just one thing about this, right, I think everybody's missed. I just want to rewind this. So this is Arsenal's pressing structure, right? And the reason I said at the start of the video that Bayern kind of taught them a bit of a lesson is because Arsenal were really brave with this, and they got it spot on, and it was very effective, and Bayern still exploited it to get that second goal. So just like Bayern, Arsenal also pressed and defended in this 4-4-2 shape. So you can imagine this is them moved right up because Bayern have got the ball at the back, and have added all the Bayern players who were involved in the build-up. Manuel Neuer, the goalie, then you've got De Ligt and Dyer. They split the two centre-backs in this situation, then the full-backs, Davies and Kimmich, they stay really wide. Then you've got a single pivot here of Lima. And what they were doing was like similar in concept to Bayern, but very different in execution, because you had Ødegaard would just sit on Lima, cutting off the ball to sort of the playmaking midfielder straight away, and then Havertz would kind of stagger himself and go and sit on De Ligt and sort of jump between him and Neuer. Now, with Saka and Martinelli staying on the fullback, straight away you can see Bayern's only real out ball here, the safe one, is to Eric Dyer. But just like with Kiwior over here, Arsenal were like, well, okay then, 1, he's on the wrong side, so it's going to be really difficult for him to play forward on his weaker foot, and 2, that guy used to play for Spurs, so we think he's So as soon as the ball would go out to Dyer, then Ødegaard would jump off Lema, closing him down, leaving him in, everybody say it with me, his shadow cover, so he's still marked even though he's left him. They would put Dyer under pressure and try and turn the ball over. And that, again, was really effective. Arsenal got a really good chance of doing this exact thing in the first half. But again, Bayern are kind of wise to that. Right before the goal, they have set this up perfectly. Again, like, here is Ødegaard watching Lema and ready to jump on Dyer, who is completely free. Havertz is cutting off the ball to De Ligt. Rice is even pushed up so they can't use Goretzka to get out this way. There's Saka in attendance of Davies, and you'll use your imagination, but obviously Martinelli's on the other side with Kimmich. Havertz does his job, steps forward to put Neuer under a bit of pressure to force him to play that ball to Eric Dyer, god damn it, leaving De Ligt in his shadow cover, and then Manuel Neuer just does this. And from there, Bayern get the ball on the right-hand side, play it forward, Kirill gets turned, they run into the box, and that's how they get the penalty. You don't see this happen to Arsenal in the Premier League, because from back to front, I don't think anybody's capable of doing that to them. And of course, if I was doing a video on the genius way Bayern Munich beat Arsenal, I would now be saying, Bespäten, thanks for watching, don't forget to like, share, and abonnieren. But I'm not, because it didn't beat Arsenal, because Mikel Arteta still had more changes in him that managed to salvage a really good result here from what could have gotten away from them. And that change was in his substitutions. Now, you might be sitting there going, well, of course it was, Adam. It was Leandro Trossard who scored the goal. He was a substitute. Or perhaps you mean Gabi Jesus, who set up the goal. He was a substitution as well. And no, they were not the genius changes. They were the obvious changes. The genius change... right there. Arteta looked at Bayern's out of possession shape and said, all right then, you don't think Kirill's any good on the ball and you're going to leave him unmarked? I'll replace him for someone who is good on the ball. Then what are you going to do, bitch? He doesn't even wait. He just brings him on at half-time, and from there, Arsenal are in almost complete control. And he was happy to get the ball out wide and do some stuff with it, but primarily what that led Arsenal to doing was getting into this sort of nearly perfect, I just need to reach across, 3-2-5 shape. And the impact Zinchenko had from this position was just really good because he passes the ball so well from these areas. He was finding Jesus really easily because they had Ødegaard and Havertz. They kept pulling wider and wider to remove that midfield screen. Jesus would then drop and receive, and then Arsenal had the ball in really good areas. It worked really well, but it wasn't quite getting them the goal. But if those two goals should have shown Arsenal what playing Bayern at this level is all about, then that equaliser from Arsenal should have shown everybody what this Arsenal team is all about. Because the reason Arsenal wanted 5 players here was to stretch Bayern as much as possible. And they brought Trossard on the left-hand side, and this, up until the goal, is his heat map. And what you will no doubt notice straight away is he is hugging that touchline. He's barely moving off it. His job is to make sure that Kimmich stays wide so there's room in the channels for Havertz or whoever floats in there to get on the ball. And yet, if we look at the moment he fires in that equaliser, he is absolutely miles away from the one position he's supposed to be in. Why? Well, it's because this Arsenal team are not scared of this Bayern team. Doesn't matter what the previous results were, all those 5-1s, or the fact they kept getting counter-attacked on, they believed in their ability to keep the pressure on and get a goal. Havertz and Trossard should be on the left-hand side. That is where they're supposed to be playing. That's where the space is in case Arsenal do turn it over, but they don't care. They don't want to wait for that ball to magically come back to them. As a team, they want it back now. And Bayern, like so many teams in the Premier League, just couldn't live with those numbers. They couldn't live with that determination. They couldn't live with that willingness to go and fight for the ball. It gets turned over, and from there, it's individual brilliance. There's been almost no space in or around the box all night, but Jesus is so good on the ball. He draws like 5 Bayern players toward him. In a panic, Eric Dyer lunges in when he really shouldn't. The space opens up, and somehow, because I've watched it back and he doesn't look, presumably through the power of telepathy, he knows exactly where Trossard is. No, you're right. He probably did just give him a shout. That is a distinct possibility, but I like my idea more. He rolls it across. Trossard gets the equaliser, and I think if you had 10 minutes more in this game, maybe Arsenal go on and win it. I certainly don't think they were in any danger of losing it. And yes, of course, it's going to be really difficult for Arsenal to go away to Bayern and win that game and get to the semi-final, especially when, as we've discussed, they're probably going to play in a way that will sort of lend itself to what Bayern really wants to be doing. But I just think when you look at the determination and the individual moments and also Arteta's on-field management, that is a team that can't just beat Bayern, or not only will beat Bayern, you know what I mean, but can go all the way in this. I am now going all the way to shop to get myself some lunch. So thank you so much for watching this here. If you have enjoyed it, please do consider subscribing to us here on FourFourTwo. Champions League, Premier League, European Championships. We will have our trousers down, excited for it all. New issue of the mag is on sale now, but they're still upstairs. I forgot to bring them down, so you'll have to imagine it. You can go get that from the description below, or in a newsagent like they used to do in the olden days. You can get me on Twitter at Adam Cleary, Clery, FourFourTwo socials in the corner of the video. And until tomorrow, yeah, I'm doing another one tomorrow actually. Until then, I will see you later. I do really feel like I've forgotten to mention something here. Like I had to tell you something really important, and now it's just completely gone out of my head. You're right. No, you're right. These outros are getting worse. I'm going. Goodbye.